if you're anything like me, you've got a ton of kids' clothes just taking up space in your house. But before you drop them off at the Goodwill or before you throw them away, make sure that you watch this video to learn how you can turn your old kids' clothes into cash.
Won't nobody love you the way they should. Won't nobody check up on you, make sure you're good. Won't nobody check those body trimmings for your neck.
Hi everyone, my name is Becky Park and I am a part-time reseller on apps like Poshmark, eBay, Mercari, Kidizen, really anywhere where I can sell stuff. But I'm also a full-time mom. Like, you can't really do that part-time, right? So I am a mom to 2 kids. I'm also a full-time high school choir teacher. So my life is pretty busy. There's a lot going on, but I really wouldn't have it any other way. And in this video, we're going to be talking about what I do with all of that kids' clothes that just kind of collects over the years as a result of my kids getting older and getting bigger and outgrowing all that cute clothes that I buy for them. If you are in the same boat, then I'm going to share some tips with you as far as what you can do to sell your kids' clothing online to make some serious money. So if you're excited to learn about how to do that, then make sure that you hit that like button. And if you are new to my channel, then please consider subscribing, because I have reselling content like this every week where I share with you just different ways that you can make money by selling clothes online. As far as my kids' clothes are concerned, the first thing we typically do once my kids outgrow their clothes is we give it away, right? Like, there are a lot of people in my circle around me who have kids as well, and kids that are younger than mine. So usually the first thing that we do is give it away. But there are some things that, people just don't want, or sometimes the seasons don't match up. And so regardless, we're always left with a ton of clothing at home. Or maybe you don't have kids and you're a reseller and you go to the thrift store a lot and you see kids' clothes, but you've never really ventured down those aisles and you always pass it up. This is one reason why maybe you don't want to. Maybe this will convince you to spend a little bit more time in that kids section as you learn that there is some serious money to be made. Now, I will be honest with you, I'm not like a pro when it comes to selling kids' clothes. I have been reselling for like 2.5 years, and I will say, like, in my 2.5 years of reselling, I have made probably at least hundreds of dollars selling children's clothing, some of that being my own kids' clothing as well as stuff that I've thrifted. But it's something that I've kind of just like made money on accident doing. It was just like I had stuff at home, so I would list it. It wasn't something that I was very intentional about. Now, I did do an interview with a reselling couple. They go by the name Ginger Marvin. They have a YouTube channel and an Instagram that you should definitely check out. But I did an interview with them on my YouTube channel about a week ago now, and I will link that video right here. And in that video, she shared that they made, I want to say it's $19,000, but I think it's actually more, but $19,000 on one app, and that app is called Kidizen. And that's not even counting all the money that she's made selling kids' clothes on other apps, because she also sells on eBay and Poshmark. So if you want to like learn what the pros are doing to make thousands of dollars selling kids' clothes, then I highly recommend checking out that interview, because holy cow, like, she was sharing some fire when it comes to knowledge about how to make money selling kids' clothes. So this is kind of more of like an introductory if you just have some kids' clothes laying around and you want to make money off of it. But like, if you want to make a career out of it, make sure that you check out that interview. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about where can you sell kids' clothes online. Now, like I said, I'm going to be focusing on online places, because obviously you could sell locally, you could sell to like local consignment stores and things like that. But there are also places that you can sell online, and the benefit of doing that is you have a much wider audience. If you bring your clothes to a local consignment store in your area, then you're really only selling to just the people who have access to that particular store. Whereas if you have your items listed online, then now you've opened it up to thousands of people seeing those items versus just the few people that go to that store in your town. So here's a list of different platforms that do accept children's clothing. A few of them are kind of like very similar, and those would be Poshmark, Mercari, and eBay. Those are all online reselling platforms where you can list things from the comfort of your own home. And the job of those platforms, and the reason why you pay a fee to sell on those platforms, is because it's their job to push your items out to thousands of people nationwide, or in the case of eBay, internationally, because because you can sell really to anywhere in the world on eBay. And I say that those are all similar because, on eBay and Mercari, you can really sell like anything you want. It doesn't have to be clothing related. And then Poshmark is a little bit more specific where it is more clothes centered, fashion centered. Although they have opened it up to, you being able to sell different things like things for the home or like school supplies. I think that's a category. I don't even know anymore what they're doing over there. Now, another app that I'll talk about, and we'll talk about it a little bit more kind of in depth later too, is the app Kidizen. Kidizen is very similar to those other reseller platforms that I already mentioned, but like the name suggests, it is centered around kids stuff, whether it's kids clothes, kids toys, kids home furnishings, like things for kids beds and kids walls and things like that. It's more geared towards kids as well as for their mamas. So they have like a mama section where it's, women's clothing, maternity clothing, things of that nature. And Kidizen is very similar to the other three platforms that I already mentioned in that you do pay a fee to sell on their platform. And it is a reselling platform where you sell your items yourself, you list them yourself. After you've photographed them, you ship them out once they sell. So that is definitely another platform that, like I said, is much more specific and geared towards kids. Now, two other places that I wanted to mention that you can sell kids clothes online. One is ThredUp. ThredUp is a little bit different from the other platforms that I just described because all you have to do with ThredUp is you just send them the inventory and then they take care of everything else. They will photograph your items, they will list your items, and they will even price your items. Now, because they're doing much more of the work, they're obviously going to take much more of a cut when it comes to how much you're going to earn from those items once they sell on ThredUp. So that's definitely something you want to consider. And given the fact that kids' clothes, generally speaking, depending on the brand, aren't going to have as big of a resale value as, maybe adult clothing, you have to figure out for yourself if you think it's worth it to send those items into ThredUp, knowing that you're probably not going to make a lot of money off of those things. And then the last place that you can list items is on Facebook Marketplace. Facebook Marketplace is kind of similar to, all the other platforms that I've been talking about, except that in most cases with Facebook Marketplace, you do have to interact with the person who is buying your item. You usually set up a place and a time to meet so that the transaction can occur. I think Facebook Marketplace is also moving in the direction of you can ship stuff out. So in that sense, it is a lot more similar now to what we're seeing with some of these other platforms that I've already mentioned. But I think Facebook Marketplace is also a lot more local than what we're seeing with some of these other apps. Because with these other platforms, you can literally sell to anyone who lives anywhere in the States or, like I said with eBay, anywhere in the world. One thing I forgot to mention is that with Kidizen, you actually have the option to integrate all of your Kidizen listings onto Facebook Marketplace for free with the press of a button. So essentially, listing on Kidizen can be like listing on two apps with just one listing. That's definitely something that gives Kidizen a leg up in my opinion, because now you've got something on a platform that reaches nationwide as well as a local platform. Now, the great thing too about selling online on some of these different reselling platforms is that you can cross-list your items, which means you can have an item on eBay as well as Poshmark, as well as Kidizen, as well as Mercari if you want. Because if you think about it, by putting that same item on all of those different platforms, or even just on two of those platforms, now you're expanding the audience who's going to see those items even more. So you're putting those items in front of more eyes, increasing the likelihood that at least one of those people is going to buy that item from you. Now, let's start talking about some tips when it comes to selling kids' clothes online. So the first thing I would say is you really need to research what brands sell well within that kids department. And if what you have at home are brands that don't generally sell for that much money, that's not to say that you can't sell online, but now you have to be a little bit more strategic about how you're going to sell that item. And actually, at the end of the video, I am going to share with you some brands that do really well in that kids spectrum. So make sure you hang out with me till the end of the video. Let's say you have this beautiful mini Bowden dress. It's never been worn. The tags are still attached. Maybe you got it as a gift or something and your little one just never wore it. Mini Bowden is definitely one of the more popular brands when it comes to kids clothing. And given the fact that it's also new with tags, that is something that you can definitely list by itself. However, let's say that the majority of the clothes that you have at home for your kids are from brands like Carter's or Old Navy, or you get your kids clothes at Walmart or something like that. It's going to be be a lot harder for you to sell a dress from Walmart, even if it is almost identical to the dress from Minnie Bowden. It's going to be difficult to sell it by itself and try to make any money off of it. So I would imagine even if it is really cute, even if it's new with tags, if you were to list it for, let's say, $10, it probably would be hard for you to move for that $10 price tag versus this Minnie Bowden dress that you could maybe list for like $28 and you could probably move it for close to that amount. So it's important to understand what brands do well and garner a higher price tag even on their own. But if you have a lot of, like I said, Carter's and Old Navy and Gymboree and items from those kinds of brands, then the smart thing to do is to lot items together. And what that means is you're not trying to sell one pair of pants or one t-shirt by themselves, but you're putting items together and selling them as a lot. Don't judge me because I know this looks crazy, but this is my organized version of the mess that I was dealing with as far as all of my kids' clothes. So it's organized in these boxes by size. And what I do is I lot them up according to, like similar styles or similar brands. And I photograph them in my light box that I have right here. I'll link it down below because I do love it. I'll also link kind of like a review video that I did on that thing. But yeah, that is what I have going on so far as organizing my kids' clothes and getting it ready to be photographed. So for example, let's say your son is now 3 years old, so you're trying to get rid of all his 2-year-old stuff, his like 2 and 2T sized items. Then one thing that you can do is look through everything that you have, and you're gonna wanna start kind of sorting things by similar brands, similar styles, maybe similar, like this is a group of tops, this is a group of pants, and you're gonna try to see what makes sense and what would be worth it for someone to wanna pay shipping on those items to get it sent to them. Because like I said, for one dress from Walmart that maybe someone's willing to pay like $6 for, they don't wanna also have to pay, an extra amount for shipping, because on a lot of these sites that we've talked about, shipping is something that the buyer has to pay for. So even when it comes to like shipping, you wanna think about how do I make it worth it for the buyer to pay to get these things shipped out to them. So I'll show you a few examples from, let's say, my Poshmark closet, and you can see that I have things like 3 pairs of newborn pant legging type things all lotted together, so that now instead of someone going into my closet and buying 1 pair of pants at a time, they can buy these 3 newborn pants that are pretty similar in style, and I think like 2 of the 3 of them were by the same brand. So that's one tip I have for you when it comes to selling kids clothes, is to create lots. There are some people out there who, like, shopping is probably one of their least favorite things to do in the world, and so when it comes to buying clothes for their kids, knowing that their kids are gonna outgrow these things very soon, they would just rather buy everything in bulk rather than sit there and sort through every single item and buy one item at a time. And that's where you having these lots available online for someone to buy, maybe their kid is turning 2 and they can just take care of all of the needs for their 2-year-old in 3 purchases because you've created these lots for them. So that's definitely a great tip, especially if you want to move out a lot of stuff at once. And again, like I said, if the clothes that you're trying to sell consist of brands like the ones that I mentioned before that maybe just don't stand so well on their own, but are great lotted up. Even if you think about Carter's, for example, Carter's sells lots on their website, right? Like, I know I have bought for my son a lot of like 3 pairs of pants. They're all like the same style, but just like different colors or something like that. Carter's sells onesies like that. You can get like special onesies from Carter's where it's like one onesie with that like special print, or maybe it's like a holiday onesie or something. But typically speaking, they sell onesies in packs of like 3 or 4. So if you kind of think about it in the same way as a retailer would, they understand that people don't want to look for that kind of stuff one at a time, and it's just easier to shop if things are lumped together in lots or in packs. Another tip that I have when it comes to selling children's clothes online is to become really familiar with kind of the jargon that people use when it comes to reselling. So for example, there are a lot of acronyms used, so you'll see things like NWT, and that means new with tags, or EUC, which means excellent use condition. And the crazy and kind of like irritating thing about all of these acronyms and like the different lingo that comes with reselling kids clothes especially, is that it can differ from site to site. Or like one thing I'll talk about here in a little bit are these buy sell trade groups on Facebook. And in those groups, depending on the particular group that you're in for some specific brand, they may have a different set of acronyms that they use when it comes to selling in their Facebook group. So you just want to make sure that you're very well versed in whatever platform or Facebook group or wherever it is that you are. You just want to make sure that you study up on the terminology so that as you're trying to sell your stuff, you're able to market it the best that you can. So some of you might be wondering at this point, well, how do I find the brands that will do well? Like what are the kids' brands that sell for a lot of money? So when it comes to doing your research, especially if you live in like a metropolitan area and you've got great stuff in your thrift stores, chances are there are some great things in the kids section of that thrift store as well, but you have to know what you're picking up. One suggestion that I have when it comes to learning what brands sell well for kids is to just look at some of these reselling platforms that I've already mentioned. So for example, on Kidizen, if you look at their homepage, they actually show a lot of the brands that are in high demand on the app because they're a little bit more pricey retail and because they have a following. So I would definitely start there. You'll see, like as I'm scrolling through, just all the different brand names. And a lot of times these are brands that there's no adult equivalent. So obviously, when you think about Ralph Lauren, that's a brand that most adults know and a lot of adults wear. And there's also Ralph Lauren for kids and for babies. Or, even if you think about like Bowden, there is Bowden for women, but there's also mini Bowden for kids. And so that might be something that a lot of us know about because we know about the adult version. And then there's like a kids version associated with it. But especially if you look, like I said, on the homepage of the Kidizen app, you can see that there are a lot of brands that have no adult partnership necessarily, and they just stand alone and they are worth a lot of money. So I would start by looking at apps like Kidizen. Another thing you can do is on an app like Poshmark, you can look at what items have sold and sort by how much those items have sold for. So for example, what I can do is I can literally just type in the word shirt and then I can search it and make sure that I click on the kids market, and I'm going to go ahead and filter by price. And so I want to see, what pieces are selling for a good amount of money. So I'm going to sort within a range of $25 to $100. And I'm going to see what brands come up often, what styles come up often. And now I know that these are the kinds of things that I need to be looking out for in the thrift store. Another reason why I think it's helpful to do kind of your brand research when it comes to kids pieces is because, like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of buy, sell, trade or BST groups on Facebook that are designed around specific brands. So for example, there is a BST group on Facebook for just the brand Peak, or a BST Facebook group just for the brand Matilda Jane, because these are children's brands that do really well, and because there are parents within this group who are trying to just sell to one another. So now that you know what brands are selling well, you can join some of these BST groups, and within each brand, there's always like specific prints or specific styles that for whatever reason are super popular, and you can learn just by kind of like observing these groups which styles or which prints are the most coveted, so that if you come across those things at the thrift store, you know to snatch them up. This is the kind of stuff that you'd never be able to figure out just by like walking by the kids aisle in the thrift store and being like, oh, this is pretty cute. Like you have to kind of go in with some knowledge, and this is how you get it. You kind of creep on some of these BST groups, or you do some research on apps like Poshmark and Kidizen to see what brands are popular, what brands bring in the most money, and what brands you should be on the lookout for. All right, so now that we've talked about where you can sell kids' clothes online, we've talked about some tips when it comes to selling clothes online, and we've also talked about how to research which kids brands do well. Now we're going to talk about what are some of those brands. Well, I did mention some of them in this video already. I talked about Mini Bowden, I talked about Peak, I talked about Matilda Jane, and obviously like one thing I learned from doing some research on Poshmark that I was not surprised by is that those designer label brands like Burberry or Gucci, obviously those are going to do really well because there's already brand recognition there and there's a sense of status tied to those brands. Another type of kids item that does really well are things like sports jerseys or things that are just specific to a certain sports team, anything like NFL, NBA, MLB related. A lot of those things can go for a lot of money because people who are obsessed with certain sports, they want to pass it on to their kids. They find a lot of joy out of seeing their kids, representing their team. So those can definitely go for a lot of money. But other brands that I'll point out are brands like Hannah Anderson, Vineyard Vines, outerwear brands like Patagonia and the North Face, especially like their buntings. Those are like those one-piece furry things that kids wear when they have to go outside and they look like little Eskimos. Those can sell for really good money. But like I said, there are a ton of brands out there. Some that are very niche, very boutique, very like you can only buy it at like a handful of places. And then there are brands that are a lot more common. Regardless of what you have at home, whether you have a closet filled with Gucci baby stuff or you have stuff from Carter's and Baby Gap, there's definitely money to be made in the kids department. So like I said, even from the perspective of someone who's really only made like hundreds of dollars selling kids clothes, I definitely still think it's worth it. And I think that's how you make it worth your time, is by lotting up the stuff that maybe isn't necessarily worth a lot on its own, or by really going after those brands that you know can still demand $20, $30, $40 for a simple shirt or a simple pair of pants, because you've done the research to know which brands are going to bring in that kind of money. If you have any tips on selling kids stuff, I would love it if you could leave them down in the comment section below. I know I'm gonna spend some time devouring those tips and reading those comments, and I suggest that you do the same, because other people are gonna leave some real nuggets of wisdom down there. So make sure that you take some time, respond to other people, learn from one another. That's one of the things I love about this YouTube community, is how unselfish everyone is with their information. Again, if you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button, as it does help out my channel. But that's it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.